Hello my wonderful people and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about a very interesting question that I see all over the internet, that I hear people saying, that I have felt myself about myself, and that is, does BPD make you a bad person? Spoiler alert, no. BPD does not make you a bad person. But despite this, we see comments really rude especially if you check things like Reddit, never do that, but you get people saying things like, everyone who has BPD is a terrible person, they're the worst, steer clear, they'll never be happy, they ruin everything, they ruin everyone's lives. It's really terrible, the information that's out there about BPD, and as we know, I believe that this is the most stigmatized mental disorder. And when you Google it or when you read up on it, it's often very negatively portrayed. And so as a part of my mission about breaking the stigma, I wanted to make a video specifically about this to help educate those who maybe hold some of those beliefs. And for all my rest of you awesome people who do have BPD, so that you stop feeling like a bad person because of your diagnosis. What people need to firstly understand is that we did not choose to have BPD. Okay, given the amount of stigma, the symptoms, how difficult it can make your life and maintaining healthy relationships, do you honestly believe that there is someone who would choose willingly to have this? Now, I'm not saying that BPD is this terrible thing that makes your life awful. Absolutely not. I have gained a lot of positives like this YouTube channel and the community that we're slowly building. But needless to say is that at times this has made me feel very lost, very alone, very alienated. And if I had the choice, if I'm being honest, would I rather not have to deal with those extra complications in my life? Yes, absolutely. Would I rather avoid being attracted to toxic people for me? Yes, absolutely, right? And so we do not choose to have this disorder. This is something that genetically we're born with a predisposition. And then because of our environment or things that happen over time, we develop this disorder. So how can you be a bad person and have this thing that you didn't choose to have? A lot of people who have BPD, their hate is directed internally, and what just ends up happening is that because we don't know what to do with these terrible feelings that we have about ourselves, we direct them outwardly, and people just end up getting caught in the crossfire of our feelings about ourselves. And that's oftentimes where people in our surroundings or in our lives get unintentionally hurt by us. Because of the symptoms and everything else, I really believe that I was a bad person, that everything was always my fault, that I sucked, that I didn't deserve happiness. And don't get me wrong, sometimes when I'm feeling really, really low, those thoughts will still come up. But generally speaking, I have detached myself largely from those beliefs that I'm a bad person. I do not want to hurt people around me, and I can say this with great confidence that most people with BPD don't want to hurt you, and they don't want to hurt those that they're in relationships with, or their friends or family. That's just not the intent. We have all this suffering and intense dark feelings inside, and it's almost like we don't know what to do with them, and the only thing we know is how to externalize things. And so we externalize them, which end up hurting people, but it's not because we're intentionally seeking to cause you suffering. What we need to remember is that BPD is a diagnosis. It doesn't make you good or bad. It just might make your life a bit more complicated. But you also need to know that all of those messy feelings and entanglement that you have inside, everyone has that. Even if you don't have BPD, everyone has confusion and chaos and feeling lost and being mean to ourselves and being mean to others. It's not because we have BPD that we're that much different. What it does mean though is that it's so much more important for us to look inwardly, so that we take the time to comb through all of that messy stuff, so that we can start to learn more adaptive patterns for living. When mental illness isn't in the picture, Oftentimes people can afford to wait until they're feeling better to do better. With BPD, however, this is not the case because there's so much inconsistency in the mood and our emotions are so volatile. We can't necessarily wait until we're feeling good to be better or to work on ourselves. We need to have this frame that the way we experience the world is different than other people. And it's so much more important for us to take the time to really work through those things, to learn about ourselves, to develop the awareness, to go to therapy so that our lens or the way that we see the world, we can have awareness that it's different and we can learn how to detach from it because it's just a pair of glasses, and we can learn how to switch our pair of glasses so that we see the world or things more in line with how others do see it as well. And all of this intensity and deep feelings and everything that you're feeling right now that probably drives you crazy about yourself is actually positive. We just need to learn how to entangle them and use them in more effective ways. For example, I used to think of myself as someone who was super impulsive. And when I started to learn and untangle the impulsivity and see it as, oh no, this is something that actually makes me more flexible and that I like adventures and doing novel and new things, well, that's actually great for me and those in my life. And so when we can learn how to untangle all that, you'll discover this person who's extremely courageous and passionate and self-aware and caring and compassionate. And all of this because you had this diagnosis which, quote, makes you a bad person. No, this makes you a better person because you need to put in so much more work to get to know yourself, get to learn how to love yourself and accept yourself, and you can actually present that version of you to others, which is not something that most people have the gift of having. I used to really resent the fact that I have BPD, but now I kind of look at it and think to myself, well, there's no way that I would be this self-aware or have this much high emotional intelligence and be so compassionate towards others was it not for this diagnosis, because I would never went to therapy. I would never have dug into myself. I wouldn't learn these basic tools. I always say that DBT, I think that everyone should do it because it's essentially learning how to communicate effectively, how to interact with others, how to make requests, how to set boundaries. So many people struggle with those things even if they do not have BPD. And so this is a blessing in disguise. You just need to start untangling up the messy parts to see the bigger picture. I also want to clarify the fact that mental illnesses, so BPD or other ones, is not an excuse to treat people like shit. And that can be a bitter pill to swallow. It's not a reason for you not to put in the work, for you not to change, for you to act as you are. It can serve as an explanation and as a way to validate your experiences and for others to validate you. However, we're not using BPD as an excuse to just act however we want. Remember that you are not a bad person. BPD is a mental illness. It's a diagnosis. It's not you. It doesn't make you any worse than someone else. And on top of that, this is something that can be recovered from. I hope that today's video was useful to you. I hope that you feel a bit more positive and elevated after hearing me talk about how BPD does not make you a bad person. And I hope that this good feeling carries out throughout the rest of your week. So on that note, have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you next time for another episode of On the Line.